Welcome to Square Notes, the Sacred Music Podcast. Your chance to learn about the teachings of the Catholic Church on sacred music, both in theory and practice. Through interviews, discussions, and music, your hearts and minds will be lifted up and better understand what it means to sing the praise of His glory. And now, your host, Dr. Jennifer Donaldson-Nowicka.
Hello, listeners, and welcome to Square Notes, the Sacred Music Podcast. I'm joined today by my good friend and colleague, Professor Christopher Berry, an adjunct professor here at our Catholic Institute of Sacred Music. Together, July 22nd and 26th this summer, 2024, we'll be directing our Choral Institute, one of the graduate courses offered by the Catholic Institute of Sacred Music here on campus at St. Patrick's Seminary in Menlo Park. The course is 5 days, anchored by sung celebration of Lauds, Mass, Vespers, and a Salve every day. We prepare Gregorian chant, polyphonic motets and ordinaries, and some hymnody to sing them in the sacred liturgy. Surrounding those rehearsals are sessions on how to run a great rehearsal, group vocal pedagogy, training the ear, addressing sight reading, and rehearsal techniques which allow directors to get through all the music that's needed for a fully sung liturgy according to the Church's vision for her sacred liturgy. Find out more about this class offered with free tuition this summer and the audition requirements for the course on our website, catholicinstituteofsacredmusic.org. The application deadline is coming up May 1st, catholicinstituteofsacredmusic.org. And now on to our topic for today, where we discuss 3 warm-ups, 3 motets, and 3 masses that every music director should know and consider. Chris, it's great to have you here with me today, and I am super duper excited, not only for this episode in which we're going to cover a Kyrie-like structure in our topics, 3 plus 3 plus 3, but also I'm looking forward to this summer. You're going to be out here at the Catholic Institute of Sacred Music for our second Choral Institute as part of our summer graduate offerings, July 22nd through the 26th. And I'm wondering if you could maybe highlight some things from last summer's experience that you really enjoyed about the class and its structure and content and the people.
Yeah, so last summer we had high expectations, and I think, if I may speak for you, our expectations were even exceeded by the actual experience. Certainly that's the case for me. So, not only musically, but spiritually and also personally as well. So for me, even as a conductor, it turned out to be a retreat. I mean, I thought the people, the students who were members of the choir were just wonderful human beings. And so I enjoyed meeting them, getting to know many of them. They sort of reinforced and refreshed me and my vocation as a church musician. And spiritually, it was great too. I mean, I had not been to Menlo Park before, to the seminary. So, the setting, as you well know, is perfect. It's beautiful. It's very relaxing. I was expecting something more sort of city-like in terms of its maybe stress or busyness, but it's a retreat, in the middle of this beautiful area of California, set apart. So it was quiet. We had lots of time with Archbishop Cordileone, which was somewhat of a surprise to me. I didn't know we'd have so much time with him. He was so responsive to us. And that was helpful. And that actually, my interactions with him are something that I reference in conversation, up to this day. He was really helpful with some questions that I had. So it was one of those perfect storms. I knew that musically it would be really challenging and really fun, but it was also very energizing and uplifting, as I say, spiritually and personally as well.
Yeah, that's great. I'm so glad that was your experience. And it jives with what I was hearing from a lot of the students. And Our schedule last year was 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And in that time, we packed in tons of rehearsal, obviously, and meals together. But also, it was all anchored in the sung lauds, mass, and vespers every day. And so this upcoming summer, we have actually expanded it to go until 8 p.m. because what we found was that we were having evening sessions of just professional development, and most everyone was sticking around anyway. And there were great conversations we were facilitating. We were able to hang out, eat dinner, and then have maybe a drink together and talk about professional things. And so we've added that as part of the experience this year, and we'll end with a solemn salve. I was inspired a bit by Carrie McCarthy's discussion of the salve service that she discussed during her keynote here in November. And so we're going to incorporate something of that this summer. So I'm wondering if we can move into now what I've asked you for in this kind of short and punchy episode for this topic. And that is, I asked you for 3 motets that choirs should learn and don't already know, 3 polyphonic masses choirs should learn, and 3 warm-ups that are really effective. So do you want to start with motets, masses, or warm-ups?
Why don't we start as we would the rehearsal with warm-ups? Is that okay?
I knew you were going to say that. Great.
So I'm warming up now, and I'm thinking, there are some, as we talked about the last time you had me on, in church choirs, we have to combine, usually because we're pressed for time, we have to combine warm-ups with practical work. At least I like to do that. And so I boiled it down. We talked about this trinity of warm-ups to 3 areas: breathing, of course, resonance, and then warming up our ears. So sort of an oral warm-up. So if I had to just pick 3, that's what I would pick. And I would start with breathing. So when our church choirs come to us, of course, they're breathing for speaking, they're breathing for their lives. So we have to get them into breathing for singing. Something I've been working on the past few months is the appoggio technique. So that is, we can come into the room, the rehearsal room, and just close our eyes for a few seconds, prepare ourselves for singing, and then breathe in for 4 counts. And then this assumes, of course, that the choir is prepared with basic breathing techniques, and so that we know how to breathe, which we went over last time. So we'll take that for granted. So we're breathing for singing, and so we're filling up our breath circle. So that's the circle around our midsection, letting that breath fall in from the top down for 4 counts. So we're regulating that breath in, and then we want to maintain that space for 4 counts, and that's the terminology we'll use. We're maintaining that space. We're not holding it. We're maintaining it for 4 counts, and then we exhale for 4 counts. And we're exhaling quietly. And depending on how that goes, you should look around the room and see how the singers are responding to this. Once that's going well, whether that's after the first time of doing this 4-4-4, breathing in for 4, maintaining for 4, exhaling for 4, or whether we need maybe 2 or 3 times of doing that in a row, then we can increase the counts. So we can go up. I would go up by 2 counts each. So breathing in for 6, maintaining for 6, exhaling for 6. So I would combine this with some alignment related issues. So while we're especially maintaining that breath, because you really, as singers, we want to concentrate during those 4, 6, 8 counts of breathing in. We want to be concentrated on that. While we're maintaining that, let's use that time really quickly to ask the questions. Are you aligned? Are you feeling the tripod of your feet, the tripod in your feet? Are you feeling your knees right above your ankles? Are you feeling your hips right above your knees? And you can say a little bit of this each time. So the first time you say, do you feel the tripod of your feet? Okay, now out for 4. Then you do your in for 6, maintain for 6. Okay, are your knees above your ankles? Are your hips above your knees? Now out for 6. And then breathe in for 8 while you're maintaining for 8. Okay, are your arms above your hips? Is your AO joint in your head right above your arms? So you're fully balanced. Okay, out for 8. So you've combined the posture and the breathing. And as conductors, we have to be, of course, really observant to see that everyone is really getting this and executing it with proper technique. So
Right.
we do that breathing, then we'd move on. We'd make sure that we'd move on in each warm up to resonance, so that again, we're producing our voice not for speaking like we do mostly during the day, but for singing. So I was just thinking, not that everything I do with my choir at home is perfect, but on Sunday, it was Low Sunday, so we hadn't rehearsed the week before. We hadn't sung together since Easter. And we were going to sing Mass 1. And we had sung polyphonic masses on Holy Saturday and Easter Sunday. So we hadn't sung Mass 1 together for a year or so. So again, because I like to combine things for time, I thought I would use a little bit of the Kyrie of Mass 1 as a resonance warm-up. So we did that. So we took the do, ti, la, sol, mi, fa, sol, do, re, do, ti, la, sol, la, ti, la, la, sol. That just end of the elésons. And we sang on neutral syllables. And for warming up, it's always good to sing on U and E. So we sing no, 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 no. It's good to start with that voiced consonant of N, no. And then we went to ni. We sang, I think, D, 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 because we wanted to hear a very precise onset of each note. Again, we hadn't sung together in a week. We started at the pitch, which was going to be our final pitch during Mass. We took that down a half step or whole step, and then went above the final pitch by a half step or whole step, just to warm up the voice a little bit. It was great. I thought that was a nice warm up because we got that descent. It's nice to start a warm up with a descent. So we start in a really comfortable part of the singing voice and bring that down into the speaking register. We moved it around, and then by the time we were warmed up more or less, and then sang that on text at the pitch where we were going to sing during Mass, we were really ready, and we'd accomplished many things. So we had established resonance, we had established the movement and flow of the Makaro method of chanting, and we had practiced our Kyrie for the day. So we accomplished a lot in one. Next, it's really, so I think those are bare minimum, establishing posture and alignment, breathing, resonance. It's nice to get the ears working next. Again, when we had sung together Holy Thursday, Good Friday, Holy Saturday, and Easter Sunday, as we would come back together, it felt like we had just sung together. So, the warm-ups are different, but particularly with some time off, we needed to warm up our ears a little bit more. So we often sing at least the verses of the Gradual and Alleluia, or the Alleluias during the Easter season, in faux bourdon, so in 4-part settings, which are very simple. So on Sunday, again, and I will often do this, we took those 4-part settings, again, on a neutral syllable. And U's and E's are really great to warm up with, because they set the vocal mechanism really where it needs to be. And so we just sang the first chord. And let's say, I think it was an F major chord, F in the basses, C in the tenors, F in the altos, A in the sopranos. So as I often do, we sang the chord. It wasn't perfectly in tune as we'd like it to be. So we sang the Fs, the tonic, and we made sure that those octaves were in tune. Then we add that fifth from the tenors and make sure the fifth is high, and so we say, look, we just gave you that chord on the piano, but we realize that we need to sing that fifth higher than the piano plays it. And so we tune that, we keep those three parts singing, and then we add that soprano third. And already we have a first chord, which is much different than it was when we first sang it. And so once we establish that first chord in tune, then we would sing through the simple, forward on of however many chords up. It's not more than 10 chords. If there are any intonation problems, we stop and we address it just as we did the first chord. We make sure the cadence is in tune. So we've warmed up the ears, and we've also practiced that forward on that we have to sing in Mass. Then we would go and speak through the text of that Alleluia verse in rhythm. So we're working on the blend of the choir, on the flow of the diction, on the clarity of the diction. And once that is in place, then we sing the forward on text. And again, we've accomplished a lot through this very simple work that's going to be a part of the liturgy that we're about to sing.
It's great. It's so time efficient and super on point. Can I ask you a question about being an F, however? There's the perpetual issue in choirs of the migration, the great pitch migration from F to F sharp. And there's that hilarious sketch actually on the BBC Proms. I don't know if you've seen it before. I forget the name of the comedian, where the orchestra behind him is playing in F, and then he's playing on the piano in F, and then he migrates his voice to singing in F sharp.
Yeah.
What do you do about that?
So at first, when I say at first, when I was first with my choir at St. Stanislaus, we used to transpose those because, yes, F can be problematic, as you say. So we would transpose it down to E, transpose it up, something written in F up to F sharp. Thanks be to God, the choirs progressed to the level, and I think choirs will do this, that they can actually sing in tune in F major. Now we also we have some pitch craziness in our choir loft because we sing a lot with our continuo organ, which is usually pitched at 415. So we're looking at F major, but it's actually sounding like E major-ish. So the tuning is not such an issue. So frankly, I can't remember if on Sunday that was the case, but I really don't worry about that too much anymore because, I mean, as far as I've been able to tell through the years, the problem with especially F major, and there are other keys like C major can be a problem too, is just, what we used to call the breaks or the transitions lie in the voice. But singers can of course learn to negotiate those.
Yeah.
And that's a really good point you bring up. With beginning choirs, I would tend to just not even go there and try to
give into the ghost and go to F sharp.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's really interesting just to bring it into circle with my work, and even not with the schola here at the seminary, but just the average seminarian coming in for voice lessons to learn how to sing the Mass. Almost always, the natural pitch that men cantillate at is F sharp. I've found that across institutions, across cultures, across accents. It must be something about the passaggio.
That's really interesting, because I've noticed that our priests tend to chant at A flat, which is sort of so just a whole step.
That's because it's a French order, right?
That's right. The high
10 high.
F sharp. Yeah, that's really interesting. No, I'm sure it is that. And of course, as you well know, I mean, we're talking around this point that pitch as we know it now, is at A440 is a relatively modern construct. And so we see especially all of these Renaissance pieces, which look like they're written in F, even when we look at the original notation. But that was just done basically out of convention. And then those would have been pitched where they needed to be pitched. But of course, the pitch was lower. So that, our mutual friend, Marcel Perez, at his workshops will take out his array, of course, of tuning forks and go through in a very hilarious way starting out, starting out with the pitch with a medieval pitch, and it'll be a very low pitch. And then his point being that the pitch has risen over the years, so that, as you well know, in the Renaissance, even though something looks like F major now, it could have been pitched a third lower than that, or anywhere, sort of between F major and a third lower, as far as we know.
Great. So let's move on now to these repertoire questions. So I asked you for 3 motets and 3 masses. I'm assuming you want to do motets before the masses. So can we, and I asked it for 3 motets that, of course, that choirs don't usually do and that they should do.
Yeah, you did. So I thought, well, how am I supposed to know which motets choirs usually do? But I thought, it's a really good question. For this coming Sunday, my choir is working on a piece from the Parish Book of Motets, published by CMAA, the Croce o Sacrum Convivium. I hadn't known this piece. It's going to be the first time that we sing it. We're going to rehearse it on Thursday and then sing it on Sunday. And I looked at it, in planning it. I had never done it in my career. And of course, it looks great, accessible enough. But then, I really went through it this morning in my preparation, which involves singing through all the parts, then, singing through one part while I play another part. And I just, unbelievably for me, I didn't make any mistakes. And it's because the piece is so well written. But it's well written, and it's singable, as we like to say, but it's certainly not boring at all. There are very few surprises. There's a lot of stepwise motion, but there are just enough sort of leaps and things to make it really interesting. And the text painting is really second to none. So this Croce o Sacrum Convivium from the Parish Book of Motets, I would highly recommend. I think it's great for any level. If you're a beginning choir, it's a rewarding challenge, but definitely an accessible challenge. If you're an experienced, mostly volunteer choir like we are, again, it's something that's going to pay dividends, but it's almost sight readable. And then, of course, a professional ensemble could do it quite easily, but it would still feel very rewarding. On Holy Thursday, we sang a motet I had not done before. I forget where I first came across it. It's by a French composer. His last name is Cherion. Cherion. He was a French Sicilian movement composer. So this piece is on CPDL, Anima Christi. So on Holy Thursday, we were singing. I know people have different theories about this. I like to sing in any one liturgy pieces from the same, historical period if possible. So if we're going to sing early music, I try to make everything early music. If we're singing 20th century music, I try to make things uniformly contemporary if possible. So we were singing Bruckner, 20th century pieces. So our choir, as many in the Catholic Church, really focuses on early music. So I decided to look for a contemporary or a 20th century piece that would not require a lot of rehearsal. So I came across this Cherion. It's in D minor. So again, it's a problematic tonality, but you can shift it around quite easily. It's mostly homophonic. It is, I think, how you can tell when you read through something with your choir, you can just tell immediately if it hits or not. Is it immediately something that they love and they want to be a part of their repertoire for years to come? Or is it something like, okay, sure, let's sing this once. But I could tell right away that it really resounded with them. And we rehearsed it one time and then sang it, because again, it doesn't require a lot of work because of its homophony, and it's a bit repetitive as well, not in a good way. And it's very sort of evocative of the mood of communion at Holy Thursday. So for more meditative moments, that Cherion Anima Christi could be great. I guess I'm thinking about communion motets, and these are of course good because they can be used so often. This may be well known, but the Séverac Tantum Ergo is, I don't know, I haven't encountered it a lot as I go around, but whenever we sing it, again, it's just, it's like if anyone knows the organ music of Jean Alain. So Jean Alain was a 20th century French composer, mostly for organ, though he wrote vocal works too. He also wrote secular works, though I'm not as familiar with them. He had a tragically short life because he died in the Second War. He was a soldier for France and died in 1940, supposedly with pages of compositions flying in the air as he was shot down. But his music, Jean Alain's music, leaves this and almost cast a spell, as it were. After one plays the music of Jean Alain or hears the music of Jean Alain, there's this organic silence which follows, which is a silence born of meditation. And the Séverac Tantum Ergo, I think, captures that spirit very well. Every time, I usually program it when we don't have a lot of time. And then I'm always, so I hate to say it, but I think we all do these things. It's almost a sort of stopgap piece. But then I'm so pleasantly surprised every time we do it. It's just this profundity afterwards. And again, it's mostly homophonic, quite accessible and repetitive for choirs, the Séverac Tantum Ergo.
It almost feels like a harmonized hymn, like a chorale style. And yeah, it can be a little bit tricky with the text interlay when you first do it, even in that homophony. But yeah, it's a lovely piece.
And you know what? I think I'm sorry. I think maybe this also helps. You and I have mentioned before this proclivity of especially traditional communities for early music, and I think we both love early music, and most of us sort of would be listening love early music. But there can be a suspicion amongst traditional
anything written after 1600.
That's right. And so I think the Séverac, or the Cherion too, other Sicilian movement composers are deliberately writing in sort of a stile antico. But in the Séverac, there can be this expansion of the harmonic palette, which could be healthy for traditional communities.
Indeed. So let's go now to our maybe cherry on top. And this is obviously for choirs that have been working together a little bit longer. You're not going to plow into a polyphonic mass ordinary right away with your choir. You're going to start with motets. But what are three approachable polyphonic ordinaries? Last time you were on this episode or on the show, and also in the Choral Institute last summer, we did one of the masses that you recommended, the Casali Mass in G. We're actually singing that at my parish choir this upcoming Sunday. But do you have three for us?
Yeah, so I chose three from different historical periods. So I wanted to start with the Renaissance or early Baroque Via Donna. So the Via Donna Missa L'ora Passa is a mass that we've sung several times this year. It's very, again, approachable for the beginning ensemble, but really satisfying for more advanced ensembles as well. I say approachable for the beginning ensemble because there's a lot of homophony in it. So there's not a lot of counterpoint to worry about. Challenging for more advanced ensembles because of if one feels it in larger beats, as we should in Renaissance, early Baroque music, there's a significant amount of syncopation, which creates a lot of rhythmic and harmonic interest. And so there's a lot to sink one's teeth into, but you can get a lot of use out of this. So the Via Donna Missa L'ora Passa. Then I've got two like stalwarts of the liturgy of the repertoire. So they may surprise you, but they surprise me. So the Mozart Coronation Mass, and I know that's sort of crazy for me to say, like, what a revelation that we might sing the Mozart Coronation Mass. But so I mention it because I always looked at it and set it, sort of like on a pinnacle, because you hear about these wonderful programs programming Mozart Coronation Mass for Great Feast. So we finally sang the Coronation Mass for the Feast of Christ the King last year, something like that, and we were surprised at how easily it came to the choir. So though I'm just saying, to please learn from my mistakes, because I had sort of saved it, and we had sort of, done our stepping stone work to get to that piece. Then we did it, and I thought, wow, this should have been one of the first big masses, if not the first one that we did, because it's really, the great secret is not that difficult. It sings really well. The writing's fantastic.
And you did it, of course, with organ reduction.
No, we did not.
You did it with orchestra.
Well, of course we did it with orchestra, right?
Oh,
you could do it with orchestra. You could do it with organ. Lots of people do it with organ reduction.
What's the number of instruments that you're looking at for, like, probably making sure that you can shove them all in the choir loft and shove them in your budget?
Well, we definitely got them in the choir loft. The budget is another question, but so we used, strings just one on a part. So, we use string quintet to cover that. Would it have been nice to have multiple players on a part? Yes, but again, the loft didn't really allow for that. And also there's, of course, a balance issue with the choir. It calls for winds. So, like, unlike some other masses, I'm just going off the top of my head, but there are two oboe parts. There are horn parts, and trumpet and timpani, as those Mozart masses are wont to have. So it's a sizable orchestra, which helps with the color a lot. I don't know, as an organist, I find the most difficult music to play to be orchestral reductions. I mean, it's just like, if you want to give me nightmares, just call me and ask me to play Messiah movements on the organ. And Mozart masses are a little bit like that. So it can be done. But that color that you get from the orchestration is a lot of bang for the buck.
All right. So, Final Mass.
Final Mass, again, is another stalwart. The Fare Requiem. The Fare Requiem, because I think it needs to be one of the first masses that choirs learn, because if we're asked to sing a Requiem Mass for someone, we can use it. It's usable, of course, for All Souls Day on November 2nd. Just, again, as I've gotten to know more and more of the literature, I've realized how well written the Fare Requiem is, and how, again, it is. We all in our church choirs, I say we all, I think most of us have really experienced singers who've been singing with us for a while. And so they know the literature that we sing. And then we also, we have, or we hope we have, and we hope to be recruiting new singers who are maybe new to choral music at such a level, or else they've sung in their high school and their college choir, and they're coming into our ensemble. And then we've got singers who are anywhere in between those two extremes. I think the Fare Requiem, and many times, I should say, one or other of those groups can be put off because either the music is seen as too challenging or too redundant. The experienced singers have sung it so many times. The Fare is one of those pieces that is, I think, always satisfying for more experienced singers who've sung it before, but yet really challenging and edifying for new singers, and they're just brought in to be a part of the ensemble. And it's I think usable for the Novus Ordo and for the traditional Mass liturgically. And of course, it's possible for concert settings. There is some solo singing, but the choral writing is, in my book, second to none. So the choir really benefits from learning it as well.
That's great. Well, you've given us a lot to think about, and hopefully singers will also consider coming to sing with us in the Choral Institute, audition, send in their audition tracks, and make the application for the Catholic Institute of Sacred Music. All that information is on our website, catholicinstituteofsacredmusic.org. And it's going to be a great summer. Thanks so much for this, Chris.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
We hope you've enjoyed listening to Square Notes, the Sacred Music Podcast with Dr. Jennifer Donaldson-Nowicka. For more information about this episode, sacred music resources, or upcoming events, visit our website at sacredmusicpodcast.com. You can subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, or your favorite podcast app. If you enjoy our podcast, please write us a review on iTunes. This improves our iTunes ranking and helps others find out about the podcast. The music you heard at the beginning of this episode is Hec Dies by William Byrd, sung by the London Oratory Schola Cantorum Boys Choir, directed by Charles Cole from the CD Sacred Treasures of England. The music at the conclusion of this podcast is from the Prelude and Fugue in G Major, BWV 550 by Johann Sebastian Bach, performed by Jennifer Donaldson-Nowicka. We look forward to having you join us next time, and until then, may we sing the praise of His glory.